Ericksonian hypnosis is absolutely one of my favorite topics because it weaves through all of the trainings that I do, as Andrea and Joan Marie are aware of. And in a few minutes, if a few more people show up, hopefully we'll do the introductions with where you'll get to hear who everybody is that's online here. So we're talking about Milton Erickson, right? Y'all know who Milton Erickson is. Y'all heard of him, right? He was early 1900s to the mid, let's see, what was the years? 1901 to 1980. He was an American psychiatrist and psychologist. And his specialty was medical hypnotherapy and family therapy. He had a lot to do in the last century of getting hypnotherapy to be recognized and respected by the medical community. So bravo for Mr. Erickson. He was a phenomenal advocate for what we do. And as I started to say, the other thing he did was he changed the style. He really changed the style of hypnosis. He changed the style. Because in the last century, in the old century, you know, back when I was born, a lot of, as some of you know, and probably all of you know, the heads of all of the big hypnosis organizations came out of the world of stage hypnosis. So a lot of the stylistic things they were doing were more based for stage. They were the shtick, I call it. I'll know my background was in acting and singing, for 20 years before I got into this 31 years ago. But it's not the style of the therapeutic hypnosis that Erickson brought into it. He brought the more kinder, gentler, what we call permissive language. It's also called indirect language, where the stage hypnosis, of course, is direct. They're the authority and they're telling you what to do. And for therapy, that's, as we've found through the centuries, isn't really the best way to help people. Mm-hmm. And Erickson, he changed so many things and influenced pretty much everything we're doing now, as well as, by the way, influencing neuro-linguistic programming. He was one of the main people that Richard Bandler and John Grinder studied and modeled his style in order to create a lot of the wonderful techniques that turned into the NLP back in 1970s. So they were studying Milton Erickson. So another name for the Ericksonian approach is the utilization approach. And what that means is that Erickson believed in utilizing anything that shows up during the session. And Joan Marie and Andrea, you probably heard me to say this before, that no matter what your client says or does, it's perfect. Right. And if you look at it non-judgmentally, and by the way, whatever happens in the environment as well, it's perfect because it's what's happening. So if you look at it non-judgmentally and you think to yourself, what can I do with this? Or what can I do with that response that my client just gave me? Instead of judging it, like we talked about, if there's a tear or if there's a jolt, all these things that happen when people are in trance, there's all kinds of little reactions that can happen and sometimes big ones. And if we stay non-judgmental and think to ourselves, wow, I wonder what I can do with this to keep moving in the direction that I'm wanting this session to go. And your creative mind will come up with something that will be useful. And instead of being a distraction, or something that would interfere, or being labeled as an abreaction, like the psychology world loves to do, then all of a sudden it turns into something that can be transformational, right? Mm-hmm. It can be a catalyst for change. And that's what we are. We're helping them. We're the catalyst for change. So if you think about that word, utilization, just use everything, non-judgmentally. So the other people that NLP studied, like I said, Milton Erickson was really the main one that influenced a lot of the NLP thoughts and ideas and principles. But also they studied Fritz Perls. That was, Gestalt therapy, if anybody did any studying or read any about that. Virginia Satir, who was pretty much invented family therapy back in the last century. Those were the three main ones, Satir, Fritz Perls, and Erickson. The other people they studied, of course, Gregory Bateson. They studied Alfred Korzybski, I think it's pronounced, and Noam Chomsky. My mouth isn't working too good tonight. The utilization approach, he's also known, like I said, for permissive language and storytelling. So he told stories, he used a lot of metaphors. He almost never did direct suggestion. Again, like the old style that is still around quite a bit from the last century of the stage hypnotists. And that direct suggestion, there is a place for it. In my opinion, once someone is in a light trance and going into that open state where their creative imagination opens up, I have found that definitely the more permissive, vague, more abstract storytelling and metaphors work so much better. Because again, you're not talking to the logical part of their mind anymore. You're talking to their creative imagination. So it just makes sense. There's a couple of books I was going to mention. I know I have more than these in my library, but these were the two main ones that I thought about. Actually, I realized I must have two of these because I found this in my bookshelf in the back, and then I found it's up there too. My Voice Will Go With You is one book that I was going to bring up. This is a smaller book, so it comes in paperback. My Voice Will Go With You, and the subtitle is The Teaching Tales of Milton H. Erickson. It is edited with commentary by Sidney Rosen. And the other book, which is a much bigger book, this is a hardcover book. This is one that I did, was part of my degree program. I think I did at least two different research projects on this book alone. And it's called Therapeutic Trances. This one is by Stephen Gilligan. And you may have heard that name before. And the subtitle, Therapeutic Trances, the subtitle is The Cooperation Principle in Ericksonian Hypnotherapy. So you think about cooperation principles. So the other thing that Milton Erickson brought in was the idea that you're not telling the client what to do and you're not the big person in charge of the session. You are the person facilitating and guiding for that person to discover within themselves the answers, the solutions, the resolving issues, all of those things. We facilitate it, but it all comes from within the client. So the cooperation principle all of a sudden put a whole lot more respect on the client and that interrelationship between the client and the therapist, the hypnotherapist in this case. So yeah, Jan, jump in. I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. The second book is Therapeutic Trances. I don't know if you can see that well. The Cooperation Principle in Ericksonian Hypnotherapy.
Thank you.
By Stephen Gilligan, S-T-E-P-H-E-N. Gilligan, like Gilligan's Island. Only different. Okay. So those are just two really nice books, depending on how deeply you want to get into this, but they're well worth the research that I did on both. I did it on both of them actually. Was just I can't even put a value on it. It was just invaluable. So metaphors and stories, indirect permissive language, style of communication, and I was going to mention, since this is such a quickie here tonight, I actually wrote. Coincidentally, I didn't think of it until after I'd already scheduled this class. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Are you seeing that? Okay. Ericksonian Therapeutic Trances, condensed version for training purposes. This is in the latest Unlimited Human magazine, which is the IACT, IMDHA.
Oh, yes.
It's their magazine. They put out quarterly.
Okay.
Unlimited Human. And I do an article for them every time they put one out. And this one, I actually forgot that I did it. It wasn't that long ago, but I forgot. And this is an article based on Stephen Gilligan's book. So this came out of the research that I did with that book. Yeah, Stephen Gilligan, Therapeutic Trances. So if you're a member of IACT, you can look up their old their old Unlimited Human magazine. And if you're not a member, I'm trying to think. I can send you the article if you like. I can't send you the magazine because that's for members only. But it was in their fall 1921. I'm really regressing here. 2021. I'm not that old. 2021 issue of Unlimited Human is the one that it was in. Let me ask all of you, who, if any of you, have done some in-depth or some extra training or studying on Milton Erickson, Ericksonian style of hypnosis. And what, if anything, would you like to share with us about your insights into it? Anybody, Sandy or Jan, have you had any other training specific to that? Okay. And Sandy, you're not muted, so if you're talking, we can't hear you.
No, I'm no training.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And I have to tell you, it is the most powerful. To me, it is the people that are still doing the direct suggestion and some of the old-fashioned, types of hypnosis. I just really would encourage everyone to do more studying on this style because it is so much more, and especially for medical type issues, but for everything. Because it bypasses the logical mind. Otherwise we might as well be doing CBT, we'll just do cognitive behavioral therapy or talk therapy of some kind. And we do, most of us that study this in depth have training in all of those things as well. They're great for the pre-talk because, you got to get their conscious mind on board as well, right? The conscious mind has to be on board. And another problem with the old style of hypnosis from the last century and before that, for the most part, was that it didn't have any respect for the conscious mind. The old style of hypnosis was, okay, bring them in, knock them out, and talk to their subconscious mind. Freud used the word subconscious, and get the work done. And they treated the conscious mind like it was totally useless. And when I first started, there was still a little bit of that in there because my first teacher, Al Krasner, was a stage hypnotist, like all the rest of the heads of the organizations back in the early 1990s. And he had a little bit of that attitude and that style. And yet he did know about metaphors and telling stories. So I still got a little taste of the Ericksonian. But Gil Boyne was somebody that was around at that same time as my teacher, who has a lot of hypnotists out there in the world still that I run into and I interact with at conferences. And they still have that style. They still have that old direct suggestion and putting hands on the clients and tapping their foreheads and rolling their heads and all these other strange things that they used to do. Sorry if any of you do those, but to me, they're a little strange. I think they're dated. And I don't think we need to do that because, again, it gives the impression that the hypnotist is the one in charge that's making something happen. And that's the last thing I want my client to think. I want them to, all I want them to know is that I am helping them to access the way for them to figure it out, the way for them to access their own inner resources. I'm just going to go over a few key points here because this is so powerful. And a lot of this is a synopsis that's part of what was in that article that I showed you. They're talking about the standard approach. It was called last century, it was called the standard approach, that direct suggestion and all of that, right? It's mostly used nowadays for research projects because if they're doing research on hypnosis, it has to be standardized, right? It has to be, every person has to get the exact same script, the exact same technique. And as we know, when we're working individually with people, it doesn't work that way. At least I hope it doesn't for most of the people that are out there. So the depth scales came from that, so they could determine someone's suggestibility. And we talk about that in our classes. I know that Joan Marie and Andrea know. And depth scales are good for research. That's, in my opinion, that's all they're good for anymore. If someone is willing and comes to a hypnotist and pays them and says they want help and they're motivated, I don't care what depth they go to. Doesn't mean don't want them to go to a nice deep level of hypnosis because it feels good and because it's beneficial to them. But a light level is all that's required for transformation, for change to happen. And as you noticed when we did that objectifying pain, the pain relief process we did. You were eyes open, right, Joan Marie? Your eyes were open.
Yes.
I didn't put you into a deep trance and take 20 minutes to do a progressive relaxation or any of that. I just said, think about this, put your attention here. Think about that. Tell me what that's like. It's an absorbing process that still puts you into trance, and your eyes are open and you're talking and you're very aware of what's going on. So here we go. So again, the authoritarian approach, the standardized approaches, the thing that they lack in this article, I say the main thing that they're lacking is the cooperation, which again is why it's the cooperation principle of Ericksonian, right? That's why they use that. And then Erickson comes along and he emphasized the relationship between the hypnotist and the subject, for lack of a better word. And he required a flexible, adaptive style where the hypnotist accepts and utilizes any and all behavior that the subject develops. There you go. Yeah, the Ericksonian approach has the flexibility to utilize, there's that word again, whatever style is best suited to the individual without the limitations of the other approaches, meaning the standardized approach or the dictatorial type hypnosis. So his therapy works to identify and expand a person's range of self-expression. I love that phrase. It sounds like a simple phrase, but think about that. Like I said earlier, hypnosis, I believe, is to give people more choices. And if the client has more choices, their unconscious is going to choose whichever one is the best and healthiest for them, right? We know that. So Ericksonian, to expand a person's range of self-expression, while traditional approaches attempted to correct the problem. It's like in the medical hypnotherapy that I do, the training that I teach, it's about the old style of we're going to fix you. What's wrong with you and how can we fix you? And that's not the way hypnosis or medical hypnotherapy works. It's about something is out of balance, something got out of balance somewhere along the way. And we know that in there is the ability for the mind and body to make the adjustments necessary to get back in balance. It's not like it's a whole different idea. So just to encapsulate a little bit of the key ideas in Ericksonian hypnotherapy, assumes the following key factors. And this is in that article that I'll send you. Each person is unique. What a concept, right? Again, respecting the client, not treating everybody the same. Oh, you have this label, so I'm going to find the script for that, and that's what we're going to do. That's so limiting. So each person is different. The therapist needs to go into each session in a state of experiential ignorance. I love that. That says it right there. Just walk in as if you know zip. You know nothing until you start getting the answers from the client by asking questions, and that tells you what direction to take the session. Now, when we're training, of course, we don't have that luxury, and people still get results, obviously, because you've been getting results in the class, right? Everybody gets results in training when you're using scripts. But ideally with a client, you want to be more flexible than that so that you can have all the scripts are in your head at some point, or the ways of saying things and the metaphors and some of those things, and even the metaphors you get from the clients. So you can be more flexible and you can help them from the world they're already living in to find a better way to experience whatever it is that they're there for. And I added in here, that's where a clearing strategy is useful. And what I mean by that, it says go in a state of experiential ignorance. That means when you walk in to work with a client, to clear all of your preconceived ideas, all of your assumptions about, 5 other clients you had last month that have this same problem, it's irrelevant. All of that is irrelevant. So I think of it like that clearing mechanism that I teach in class, where I take that breath and it's like, it just washes away everything, even what that person told me on the phone when they made the appointment or when I talked to them or interviewed them. Everything disappears, and being in the moment and watching and listening for what's going on, and how can I help it to move in the direction that the client's wanting to go? So hypnosis is an experiential process of communicating ideas. That's all it is. You put out an idea. If you don't see the right or the response from the client that you would like to see, the one that's going in the direction that you know you want to help them go, then you change your strategy, right? As the guide, as the hypnotherapist, and you change how you're saying something, or you go to a different strategy until you see the movement in the right direction. So arousing ideas and associations, because that's what the client's always doing while you're talking to them. Their mind is comparing and contrasting and associating things within their own field of self-identification. So the therapist can identify and utilize the mental processes of the client to formulate suggestions and to participate in this process, this communication process, experientially, in the moment, in the now. Ideally, that's where we all want to be, right, with our clients. Redirecting their attention hypnotically to accomplish therapeutic goals. That's the whole idea. Another key component of Ericksonian style is that each person has generative resources. It assumes everyone already has what they need when they walk in. The resources might be constrained or dissociated, and that's our job, to help access them, help the client to be able to access and utilize those resources. So it's the responsibility of the therapist to employ transformational strategies in order to assist the client to actualize relevant resources via experiential exploration. And that's what we're always doing, right? We're exploring. We're helping the client explore their consciousness for what's it going to take to change my experience, to change my physical dilemma, to change my whatever it is, problem. So, and after that statement, that's all about Erickson, again, connecting it to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, because again, they studied Erickson. So they came up with one of their main presuppositions. If you ever studied NLP or do in the future, well, I know two of you will be doing it this weekend, you know, that you're going to see this. One of the presuppositions of NLP, meaning one of the principles that are absolute, concrete, ironclad, is that everyone has the resources they need. And that's where that came from. It came from Erickson.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important. And I tell my clients, I say, I can't give you something you didn't walk in the door with. All I can do is show you how to access what you already have. And that's empowering. And that's why I love this field. That's empowering for clients. So trance potentiates resources. Just by putting someone, what that means is just by putting someone into a hypnotic trance, a light trance is all that's necessary. And everybody goes in and out of those all day long. So it's not hard to get someone into a light trance. They usually walk in a light trance when they start telling their story, right? So it potentiates. As soon as they get into that light state of alpha, it potentiates resources. The resources start to show up automatically. So it makes our job very easy. All we have to do is get them into that state, hold that space to allow that state to continue, and then to access all of those great resources. So people that have problems, they tend to be stuck in a self-contained behavioral loop. So they're on automatic. They're kind of, if you think about a smoker, that's a self-contained behavioral loop, right? They're stuck in that smoking loop. They don't know how to get out of it because it's so ingrained and it gets reinforced every day so many times. And then they got the negative thoughts that keep making them weaker against that behavioral loop. And they're stuck there. The trance state opens that up, loosens that up, and allows for that person to have the opportunity to start developing a different expression, a different behavioral loop, if you will. So when they get stuck, that's what we do. We help them to get unstuck, and we help them to be empowered. The trance state is invaluable in assisting transformational change by offering an unbiased state. The state of hypnosis, like I said, unjudgmental, non-judgmental, in which the client can access unconscious resources. This is all the principles of Ericksonian hypnosis. And like I said, if you ever take NLP training, it's heavily embedded in all of these things, which is why it's so powerful. They just updated it a little bit, brought it into the new century, right? So another principle is trance is naturalistic. Remember, we talked about it's not hard to put someone in trance. People that work hard to get somebody to go into a trance is like they're making their job harder, because trance is natural. People know how to go into that state. It's just directing their attention to different things is all we're doing. It's the communication. It resembles common everyday patterns of behavior, except that it can be intensified, it can be controlled, directed, and prolonged by the language we use, by the processes we're doing with the clients, by the techniques and all of those things. So because the trance state is in accord with normal processes, naturalistic communication can be used. And that is so Ericksonian, naturalistic. Utilizing the client's own symptomatic expressions of the problem. Again, the utilization approach, utilizing what the client already has inside of them. Another principle of Ericksonian hypnosis, they orient to course alignment rather than error correction. Again, we're not focusing on the problem and fixing them. We're focusing on alignment, realignment, rebalancing, course alignment, redirecting their attention to the things that will help keep them in a better state to get whatever their goal is. Focuses on achieving the goals and the needs of the present self. And again, utilizing, there's that word again, past and present learnings, which is why we do a lot of, we can do regression work in hypnosis. Part of that is to pick up resources, to remember resources, to re-access them, anchor them, and bring them into the present context of whatever the current problem or issue or disease or whatever it is, so that they can use all of those things they have learned in the past and bring it into the present tense. A person's uniqueness can be appreciated on many levels. This is another Ericksonian principle. The deep self, whatever that means to anybody, right? And I'm sure if you asked 100 hypnotists, they'd have 100 different things that they think that means. But you get what that is, the deeper part of the person, the unconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the contents of all of the consciousness. So in other words, the whole shebang, the whole being, whatever that includes, and whatever labels or thoughts that client has about what makes them all of who they are on an energetic level, maybe on a spiritual level, it doesn't matter. All of what makes them who they are. And their belief system, of course, we're going to deal with that within the session as well, because that's important. Unconscious processes, this is another principle. They can operate generatively or autonomously. So those unconscious processes are going on behind the scenes all the time. It presumes the unconscious processes are intelligent, organized, creative, and these are all resources that can operate independently as well. So our task as the hypnotherapist is to enable this process, to enable the process, the unconscious processes. If they were conscious, then they'd already be using them, right? Our job is to access them and bring them into where they're useful. Establishing a coherent, and it says a therapist has to enable the process by facilitating conditions. And here's how we enable the process: by establishing a coherent intention. So in class, you know, we talk about creating a well-formed outcome, setting the GPS so they know where they're going. What is the intention? Why are we doing this? What is the outcome we're looking for? That has to be coherent. Ensuring a rhythmic, balanced biological context. So again, all of the parts of the physical are also all the mind, the body, the emotions, everything is in rhythmic, just balance. Developing ways to cooperate effectively with social structures. So again, we talk about checking in on the ecology. What are the outside influences? What's in their environment that's affecting their state, that is keeping them from being, doing, or having whatever they're coming to you for? So, and here's just real quickly, elementary principles of Ericksonian hypnotherapy. The general principles outlined here meant to be a flexible guide to assist Ericksonian hypnotherapists in effective hypnotic communication. And these I'll just go through real quickly. Number one, accept the person's reality. Number two, utilize the person's reality. Again, here's what's happening with them. Here's the way they're experiencing life. How can I use it? What can I do with it? Pace all behavior. This again, Erickson pacing. That means you start where they are and you're pacing, you're accepting it unjudgmentally and you're pacing it. And that enhances rapport. Pacing enhances rapport because you're in their world. You're traveling in their rhythm, so to speak. And then leading behavior. That's the next principle. Because once you're in the rhythm of what's happening right now with them and you understand that, now you can start, once you have rapport, you can start to lead them into a different context, a different energy, an energetic, balanced area where they can think differently, where they can feel different, all of those things. Introduce variable, subtle distinctions to gently lead the client toward a more desirable state. And I've said that probably in your class many times, my two students that are here, we're state shifters, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
But we have to meet them where they are. We have to understand where they are in order to get them to shift that state. And the less judgment we use, the more comfortable they are with us. And that means they will follow us when we start leading them into another way of thinking about whatever is going on and experiencing it, therefore. Failure in eliciting a desired response with leading in the Ericksonian style, that can be due to insufficient rapport. Again, if you start trying to lead the client, then you end up then they're going to feel like you're telling them what to do, right? It's going to be back to the old style of direct suggestion and you're in charge and I'm supposed to do what you tell me. So insufficient rapport, they're not going to follow you. That's one of the main things that cannot get the response that you're looking for. Leading communication too different or too abrupt. So you got to be gentle, right? Gently lead them in a little different direction and make sure they're following you all along the way. So don't lose them and, try to move too fast or too abruptly. The other thing is the specified state is out of sync with the client's beliefs or values. This is why we have to understand what kind of language to use. So if we start talking to a client who doesn't believe in past lives and we start talking to them in the metaphysical realm and bringing up things like, that are relating to karma or reincarnation or something, we're going to lose them. Again, you're going to lose rapport because it'll be out of sync with what their belief systems are. It's not our job to try to convince them to think of anything in any certain way. It's just to think of it in a way that gets the result they want.
Mm-hmm.
Resistant behavior is a statement that the therapist needs to pace some further aspects of the client's experience. So again, if you're getting a resistant client, which I can't imagine how that even happens with people, but I guess when I first started, it probably did happen a few times. I don't know. I don't remember it, but resistant behavior in the client is going to be because you don't have rapport, basically, is all it's saying. You need to pace them more. Establishes a continuous rhythm in which patterns can be recognized, accepted, and utilized. Pace and depotentiate conscious processes. Various indirect communication techniques may be used to bypass the and again, we talk about bypassing the critical faculty. Once we get that rapport going in the pre-talk and we start doing an induction and then want to get them into the deeper levels of their mind, of their unconscious, their inner mind, however your language you use, then what we're doing is depotentiating their logical mind. Because if their logical mind is following too closely and starting to pick apart or analyze or critique it, that's going to get in the way of those creative juices flowing and finding a more metaphorical or a more abstract or creative way to resolve their conflict or their problem. Absorb and amplify unconscious processes. Unconscious processes can then be utilized to activate creative resources and potentials for change. Okay. Use indirect communication, again, permissive language, that's called. So there you go. And that's all taken from this book, by the way. And that article that I wrote for Unlimited Human, that's all from part of my research projects that I did on that book. So it's Ericksonian style. So, any questions? Any comments? Did I put you all to sleep? If there's any questions, like I said, this is just very tip of the iceberg of Ericksonian style. Hopefully you got something out of that. Of course, in class, Joan Marie and Andrea, there's two of my students that are kind of in the middle of their training right now. They'll be getting a lot more, and they've already gotten a lot on Milton Erickson, because that is, to me, the most efficient style. Doesn't mean it's the only thing you should learn. I think you should learn every style that's out there and, make up your own mind. But as far as for the medical hypnotherapy and for really, again, it has more respect for the client. It's a softer, gentler way of doing therapy, and it empowers the client. It gives them the ability to just make the discoveries and make the changes on their own. So they walk away with tools that they can use, in everyday life for everything. The next free webinar is July 19th. It's usually third Wednesday of the month, unless something unusual is happening.
Okay.
July 19th, and it's going to be on timeline techniques.
Okay.
So if you'd like to be here, for some of you, it might be a little review. I love learning the same thing over and over as many times as I can, because I always get something new out of it, or something a little different take. And depending on who shows up at these seminars, a lot of times people bring in things that I'm just like, wow, I've never even heard of that one before, that idea. So I'm learning here too. So hopefully you'll stay in touch. And I'm always here. I'm officially in the IACT IMDHA mentoring program now. So I've got a couple people I'm mentoring, and it's so much fun, and we can all learn from each other. So hopefully you'll be here, and I will see Andrea and Joan Marie this weekend, and the rest of you, hopefully I'll see you soon, because the hour is over. So thanks for coming. And April, I'll make sure I get you the replay.
Thank you so much.
And you'll
Thank
get
you, Patricia.
my email those things. Nice to see you, Jan.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Thank you. Happy
Bye-bye.
summer solstice.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Summer
right.
solstice.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that.
It's
Yeah.
raining over here in Texas.
All right.